Alright, so what we're looking at today is doing some simplification and some operations with complex numbers. We talked complex numbers the other day. That's numbers with I in there. That's when we take the square root of a negative number. So we need to take a quick look at some operations and some simplification. So the first thing that we need to know is some of these values. So I to the 0 power, so remember anything to the 0 power is going to be 1. So that's just blank. I, that's just I to the first power. I squared, so remember I squared, well let's think about what I is. I is the square root of negative 1. So if we go ahead and multiply that by itself, we should end up with what's inside, so that's a negative 1. So we have 1i and negative 1. If we do I cubed, that's the same thing as I squared times I. So if I squared is negative 1 multiplied by I, that's going to be a negative I. I to the 4th, that's just I squared times I squared. So I squared is negative 1, so negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. So if we continue on with I to the 5th, that's going to be I to the 6th would be negative 1, so the pattern repeats every 4. So that's why if we look over here, if we take our exponent and we divide it by 4, and we see how many times it goes in evenly, whatever the remainder is what's going to be the value of I to the whatever exponent we're starting with. So let's take a look here. So I to the 15th, if we divide by 4, so it goes in 3 times evenly, and then there's a remainder of 3. So this is equivalent to I to the 3rd, which is equivalent to negative I. That's how we break it down. So 34 divided by 4, so that'll go in 8 times. There's 2 left over, so that's equivalent to I squared, which is equal to negative 1. So final answer is negative 1. Okay? So I'm going to skip that one. We're just dividing by 4. So go ahead and try the checkpoints, and then we'll start back up. So I to the 37, we could put 4 in. It would go into 36 evenly, so we have 1 left over. So I to the first power is just I. 40 divided by 4, that goes in evenly, so we have a remainder of 0. So we know remainder of 0, that would be the same thing as I to the 0, which is 1. Okay? Alright, so example 2. We're going to simplify expressions. We're multiplying together, so we're going to multiply, kind of like we did the radicals. So we're doing 4 times 7, so that's 28. And then I times I, so that'd be I squared. Now we have to simplify. So if it's not I, if it has a higher power, we need to simplify it. So I to the I squared is negative 1, so we're going to multiply 28 by negative 1, and we get negative 28. Okay, so multiply that. I'm going to skip that one just to make the video a little bit shorter. So let's go to here. We have 2I to the 3rd power, so first we need to distribute that in. So 2 to the 3rd, I to the 3rd, times 5I. So 2 to the 3rd is 8. So 8 times 5 is 40. I cubed times I would be I to the 4th. And we know I to the 4th is 1. So our final answer is 40. Okay. So let's talk about complex numbers. So when we're writing a complex number, and I kind of mentioned this the other day in the other video, so 5 plus 2i is an example of how a complex number is written. We have the real part plus the imaginary part. Okay, so a plus bi. That's always the format that you want it in. So when we go ahead to adding and subtracting, we're simply combining like terms. So 8 plus 5, so we're going to put that together. We have 13. And then this negative I plus a positive 4i, that's going to be a positive 3i. And just checking that we're in the complex number format, we have an a plus a bi. Okay? Now this next one, 7 minus 3, be 4. Negative 6i minus a negative 6i, so that just changes to addition and it cancels. So we're just left with 4. Okay, so we're going to skip that one. Try the checkpoints. So we have 9 and a negative 6, so that's a 3. We have negative I and a 7i, so that should be 6i. And then here we have a 3 minus 8, so that should be negative 5. 7i minus negative 2i, that's an addition, so plus 9i. Example 4. So write an expression as a complex number in simplest form. So what we need to do first is any power higher than 1 for I, we need to simplify. So I squared is negative 1, so we have a negative 4 here. Plus 6i, so we're not reducing I, it just stays what it is. And then I cubed. So I cubed is negative I. So negative I times negative 2 is a positive 2i. And we go ahead and put those together. We get 8i added on to a negative 4. And that's that. So let's do one more quick. So 3i cubed, we said was negative I, so this is going to be plus I to the 5th, so I to the 5th, remember divide by 4, so it goes in evenly, and then we have a remainder of 1, so that's just a positive 4i. And then 6, so we have a remainder of 2 when we divide 6 by 4. So a remainder of 2 means I squared, which is negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 7 is a positive 7. So putting those together, we have 10 plus 5i, and that would be your final answer. Alright, last example. So it says find values of x and y that satisfy the equation. So making sure they're in complex standard form, a plus bi, which they are, we can assume that the real portions are equivalent. So we can say that 2x equals 10, and then x would just be 5. So we found x. Now we need to find y. So if we look at here, negative 7i equals yi, so y is going to be equivalent to negative 7. Alright, so try those checkpoints and we'll go through those. Alright, so looking here, we should say that x is 9 and y is equal to 1. So we have a, remember, so negative sign, so negative y equals a negative 3. Okay, for that to work. Alright. So now, this one, we have 9 equals 2x, so x equals 9 halves. And then 4y equals 3, so we're going to have a y equals 3/4. And that's it. So let me know if you have any questions, and we will continue on this path in another video.